Walking down the street, sitting on the bus, or driving, you might catch a glimpse of a brown-skinned woman pushing a stroller with a white baby in it. Many often don't even notice these women. Who are they? The vast majority, 97%, are women from the Philippines who come to Canada through the Live-in Caregiver Program, the LCP. Many leave their families in the Philippines, travel across the world to work as nannies, and send the money they earn back home, providing the main source of income for their families. Thousands of Filipinos have been coming to Canada ever since the Live-in Caregiver Program was set in place in 1992. It seems to be a good deal. At least there's an opportunity for them to come to Canada in the first place. In fact, many families employing the nannies believe that it is a win-win. The LCP meets their needs for child and elderly care, and it provides jobs to Filipinos. After all, 1 month's salary here in Canada is more than they could ever earn in a year in their home country. Sounds great, right? Well, the story is a bit more complicated. Let's lift off the roof and look inside. LCP workers come to Canada, pay for their own plane ticket, and pay private companies to be trained and find an employer. And these fees have risen higher and higher since the LCP has been put in place. They are now in debt even before they start working. They begin to work in their Canadian employer's home, where they also must live. Let's pause here for a moment. No other foreign worker program requires this. The women are isolated. Some are exploited and work longer hours than laid out in their contracts. Some end up doing extra favors for their employers and not having a single day off their week. Some nannies take care of more than one family. The LCP worker is expected to be the whole package. Cooking, cleaning, babysitting, elderly care, driving, household chores, cleaning the car, the list goes on. And because of the nature of the work, women have been sexually exploited and taken advantage of. Under all of this, though, most have post-secondary education and have worked as professionals even before they were LCP workers. But through their years in the LCP, they are de-skilled because they're taking care of Canada's service needs and not practicing their original profession. Many LCP workers are afraid to speak out to their employers. They run the risk of being fired or even being deported back to the Philippines. How did the LCP all start? In the 70s and 80s, many professionally educated Filipinos came to Canada and worked in the professional fields, such as in the medical sector, nursing, and teaching. At the same time, more Canadian women started working outside their homes looking for childcare. Enter Canada's temporary foreign worker program, which during these decades brought in caregiving labor filled by women of color, many from Caribbean countries. The foreign domestic worker program was changed to the Live-in Caregiver Program in 1992. Where was the Philippines in all this, you ask? The Philippines had also been exporting migrant workers since the early and mid-70s. This was a time when rising foreign debts and structural adjustments imposed by the World Bank and IMF were major causes of economic decline. This led to serious government corruption and civil unrest. Exporting workers who sent their wages back home was supposed to be a temporary measure to bolster the country's economy, but through the labor export policy, it became a more permanent policy. So programs like the LCP are popular for the Philippines for a reason, as more than $12 billion of remittances sent home by migrants is what is keeping the economy afloat. In the Philippines, these workers are celebrated as national modern-day heroes, but in many ways the LCP worker can be considered to be a modern-day slave. Yet many workers see the program as a golden opportunity to become a Canadian citizen. Currently, over 8 million Philippine nationals are working abroad in over 182 countries. The majority, approximately 85%, are on temporary labor contracts. So as you can see, both countries benefit from this program. The LCP is part of a growing phenomenon fueled by globalized capitalism. It's connected to the fact that Canada is a capitalist country. These workers become part of a growing cheap labor pool. National economies benefit while workers are exploited. Let's look at the case of an LCP worker that has completed 3,900 hours of work. The forms are submitted, money is short, time passes. These are long waits for processing. Sometimes the wait can be 6 months to a year. What happens then? Where do they go? Some of these workers continue to work for their employers. Others become floating migrants. They continue to live in poverty, waiting for their PR applications, working low-wage service sector jobs, dreaming about their families. Many try to work their jobs of their original profession, but they cannot work in these fields as they have been unable to keep up the requirements for practice. Many women compromise themselves just to have a roof over their heads. Many live with the fact that their families back home are broken. Husbands cheat on their wives, children are affected by the separation, sometimes money that's sent home is spent elsewhere. There are so many stories that are happening in the cracks of this system that continue to negatively impact the lives of these women. The LCP started way back in 1992, and until now, the same problems and challenges facing these women still remain, and some have even become worse. There have been those speaking out and a movement of resistance to this Canadian program that has been alive since the early 90s. The PWC, which stands for the Philippine Women's Centre of Canada, which started in BC and has movements in Toronto and Montreal, have been questioning the underlying system of this Canadian policy for years. The Philippine Women's Center has been researching the issues that come out of the LCP, issues of class, gender, and race, and exposing the truth that is not being talked about. They have been organizing conferences, workshops, creating events, and speaking at protests to uphold their call to scrap the program once and for all. The LCP is not just a Filipino issue, it's a Canadian issue. Until we meet the urgent need for accessible and affordable childcare and public health care for all, this cycle of exploitation will only continue. Canada prides itself as a free country, but can we really say that these are our values when LCP workers continue to be exploited and invisible? Let us break this cycle of exploitation and join in solidarity with the Philippine Women's Center.